Okay, all right, all right. All right, calling to order the Board of Directors meeting for South Sound 911 for June 17th, 2026. It's 9 o'clock, well, almost 9 o'clock. And if we could call roll, that would be great.
Board Member Branstetter. Board Member Bushnell.
Present.
Board Member Casebolt. Board Member Denson.
Here.
Board Member Holm. Board Member Hubler. Board Member Holsey. Board Member King.
Here.
Board Member Mello.
Here.
Vice Chair McGilligan.
Here.
And Chair Rumbaugh.
Here, and I just want to say thank you for everyone who's here in person, but we did have our photos today. That might be why everyone's here today. And so public comment. Do we have any, do you want to see if there's anyone here for public comment?
We have not received any today.
Okay, bummer. All right. Approval of the agenda. All right, so
I'm here.
yes.
Move to approve the agenda.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. All right, consent agenda.
Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the May 20th, 2026 Board of Directors meeting. And item number 2, motion 2026-19 to authorize approval of the 3-year Microsoft 365 G5 enterprise agreement through Microsoft affiliate SHI International Corporation in an amount not to exceed $1,056,000 plus any applicable taxes.
Move to approve consent agenda.
I'd like to take item 2 off the consent agenda.
Okay, so can you make a motion?
So, to approve the consent agenda as amended.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so we will listen to the motion on the 3-year Microsoft 365 G5 enterprise agreement. And it looks like Tristan's going to come up and talk.
Hey, good morning, board. I am happy to answer any questions about this from any members, but this is to approve the 3-year commitment for our upgrade to Microsoft 365 G5, which is a necessary step forward for our next generation of cybersecurity, interconnected, modern 911 systems, and it locks us into this price for 3 years where we see prices jumping considerably if we don't do this. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. The request for board action talks about how this differs from what we've historically done going forward.
Correct.
In that, and it talks about if things have to be adjusted, it said minor adjustments will be managed via contingency. What does that mean?
Great question. So in the past, the past 2-3-year cycles, so 2020 to 2023 and 2023 to 2026, we've approved a commitment of 3 years, but every year we come back to essentially re-up what that cost is going to be, where we have slight variations in the number of licenses for our number of users, both here and in our partner agencies. And as those licenses change, we'll see a slight bump of, I did the math and it averages less than 8%. And that requires us to come back in the past, we've come back every year to address that. And it's usually about a $12,000 difference on an annual basis. This, instead of having to come back on an annual basis to re-up, we're putting this in there with a 10% contingency to cover that. It reduces the board's need to look at this on an annual basis because we're already committing to this 3-year piece and allows things to move more smoothly.
So what would be a potential change that wouldn't be considered minor?
Anything beyond the 10% contingency that we put in. So if we had another large agency join South Sound 911 that had a significant number of licenses they needed, and that pushed us above a 10% change, then we would come back and address that with the board.
So the figure of $1,056,000 includes a 10% contingency?
Yes, it does. So it's the 320,000 annually plus a 10% contingency for 3 years.
And the quote, well, the quote cites hard numbers for year one. It implies on the payment schedule that uh, the payments for each year would be the same. There's no inflationary
Correct.
things to do that. And it totals out to the 1,056,000. So is the quote asking for the contingency?
I believe the quote includes sales tax, whereas our request does not include sales tax, other than the topic of any
So-
applicable taxes, which would go in addition to the 1,056,000.
Okay, so that would account for the difference between the number on the quote and the
Correct.
number that we're being asked to approve as a budgetary item.
Right, we're asking for approval of the amount, not including the sales tax, plus a 10% contingency. Understanding that we lock in these 3 years, so there is no inflation over those 3 years that we have to account for.
Okay, and let me just say that a change of, you say a change of 8% or less would be considered minor and would be handled as through the contingency that's built into the contract.
I would say a change of 10% or less, which is why the contingency is 10%. Historically, we've seen an average of about 8%.
Okay, and a change of over 10% would be handled using the former process?
Right, we would come back and address that with the board because that change had not been approved at that point.
All right, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move ahead with committee, now we're going to move ahead with committee reports. Or we can do a motion on that? Okay, right now? Okay, all right. So a motion to authorize the approval of the 3-year Microsoft. Do you want to read it again?
I'll do it.
Oh, you will. Okay, thank you.
Chair, motion 2026-19 to authorize approval of the 3-year 2026 to 2028 Microsoft 365 G5 enterprise agreement through the Microsoft affiliate SHI International Corporation in the amount not to exceed $1,056,000 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you. All right, now we will go to committees and other reports. Thank you so much. Finance Committee briefing first. Inviting up Finance Director Janet, and I can never say your last name. Could you say it?
It's Caviezel.
Caviezel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for correcting me.
Of course. It's not an easy one. So, good morning. The Finance Committee met on June 1st this month. They had 4 items on the agenda. The first was 2027 budget requests, which were moved forward to the PSCOC for review. Second item was a discussion regarding the cost allocation formulas. The third item was 2027 budget development, where the committee discussed staffing and capital project proposals for next year. And finally, they received a briefing from the executive director on a radio public utility district. Questions?
Would it be okay to ask you to just discuss what the requests were for the 2027 budget?
Sure, there were 4 requests. One was withdrawn, so that was a Gig Harbor request for radio service fees, so that was withdrawn. And then the PSCUC, and they're going to give a report on that too, but what was moved forward was a $2.9 million radio infrastructure improvement that was brought forward by Chief Yalbe from Stillicum. The emergency alerting for Genesis for 12 cities in Pierce County. And then Tacoma Fire Department had a request for a communication system.
I didn't mean to make you remember all those, but thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Janet? All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh my goodness, the bylaws and committee update. Can we get Council Kendra here?
Yes. Good morning, Chair and Board, and our ad hoc committee chair, Hubler. If I missed something, let me know. We met last on June 3rd. We've had a lively discussion about our bylaws. We've gone through, at this point, Articles 1 through 4. So if you have a moment to look at your bylaws, let us know if you have any feedback. You can let me know specifically. What we talked about was primarily the Finance Committee and not requiring the chair of the board to be a member of the Finance Committee, providing that as an option potentially, making sure that it was clear that the board recognizes the goal for Finance Committee membership to include at least one representative for the fire district contract agencies and one member representing the smaller agencies. So we're trying to revise the language to be more encouraging and also allowing more members to participate. So potentially reviewing an addition for 2 terms, each of 3 years on the Finance Committee, but recognizing that sometimes it's hard to get people to volunteer. You're very busy. So not excluding or having term limits necessarily. And moving forward on July 1st, we'll meet again and we'll talk about voting rights and any limitations for alternates who are not elected officials, as well as reviewing the proposed revisions to the Finance Committee, and then talking a little bit more about administration in Article 5. Thank you.
Yes. Can you put your microphone on? Thank you.
Darn things. The only thing I think that Kendra might not have, I think I was trying to follow along, but we did talk about meeting rules as well, whether if we have consecutive absences, if somebody emails or calls in saying that they will be absent, if that would be considered just an automatic approval of absence. Just kind of trying to tidy up that a little bit.
So that would be for like the whole board. So
Correct.
can you go through that again, Councilmember Hubler?
It's so kind of fixing the, like working on the meeting rules. So if you're to attend a meeting, kind of making the words should rather than, or from a should to a shall, and then it like adding in like if you have 3 consecutive absences without communication from the person, then they would automatically be removed from the board. And if somebody emails like the chair or Marlena and says, hey, I won't be there today, then consider that an automatic absence so it wouldn't have to be brought forward or anything.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Are there any questions about any of the things that we just talked about with the bylaws?
Just,
Yes, Vice Chair.
Kendra, do we have a list of the changes that you're requesting in the bylaws that red out or blue, or is it on the website or?
So not yet. We're still continuing our work and then it will come back to you. I'll give you just a preliminary review. It'll come back in a track change form. So you'll see all of the modifications we've discussed and the bylaw committee will recommend that to the board.
So we'll see, we won't see anything until all the changes have been recommended.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Bushnell, do you have any comments? Okay, because I know you'd sit on that as well.
I just appreciate everybody that's on that board. We really go through this with a fine tooth comb and go back and forth on it. So really looking forward to have a discussion with the board once we finish review.
And so you said that you're done with the first 4. How many more are there? Because I'm wondering if, I'm just thinking that it's a lot to go through and maybe if we could break it up in half and see half of it and then half of the next time. I mean, I just wonder if it might make sense to bring some of it forward sooner rather than later. Is it just because it's in your mind why you made the changes? Sometimes as you get going on something, it's a longer document. You forget why you thought you should do whatever.
That might not be the best way to go, because what we're finding as we go through things, then we come to another thing and it reflects back to something we've already
Okay.
done. And so it's Kendra is sort of managing us to go through it section by section, but we don't always align with her plan, and we go back because something in the new section reflects on the old section. And that would happen, I think, if we were to start to present things that look like a final determination that then in the end might not be.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Hubler.
We do find there's repetitive things. So having, Kendra's got a great eye for going through and helping us. And then so does Michael, getting through those repetitive things and making sure that we're not seeing like in one chapter, the same exact thing that we just saw in another, or being able to change the wording so that they fit together.
So how many are there?
Great question. Article 6 is the end. So we anticipate probably finishing our review. I don't want to make any promises because we might have another bylaw meeting in August, but we might be done July 1st. And then I'll pass it through the ad hoc committee for their review, make sure I didn't miss anything. So we're really close to the end and we've done a lot of the heavy lifting already.
There aren't like 20 is what I mean. So.
Not yet, unless we add more, which they're allowed to do.
All right, Vice Chair.
So what I heard is the best way to get off the committee is miss 3 meetings in a row. Just checking.
Well, thanks for taking on that daunting task. Some people are really good at those kind of details, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing on that. So thank you. So now we're on to the PCOC report. And Chief McGrady. And wait a second, Chief McGrady, how many times have you actually gotten up here now?
This is my second.
Okay, so this is his second time, and we're really happy to have you here today.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Obviously, we had a PSCOC, very productive PSCOC meeting recently. We did went through the 2027 budget presentations. I'll be formally bringing forward 2 of those formally today, or speaking to those today. And just for everyone's awareness, they're listed in order of priority, and I can answer a few questions on that if anybody has any. But in terms of recommendations from the PSCOC, the main or the number one priority coming out of that was the supporting funding for the Genesis alert system, which is an alerting system that's used by a lot of the municipalities within the county. The request was for just over $81,000. There was an adjunct added to that. Edie Yamamoto actually had made a recommendation. The county uses the Everbridge system, so there's 2 redundant systems. And matching, the request was to add matching funds to match the City of Tacoma's portion of that request for the Everbridge system as well. So there's a little bit of a balanced support for both systems in the region. So with those 2, the total budget request being a little over $120,000 for next year. Second on that was a proposal from actually Tacoma Assistant Chief Alex Wilsey. This was to support a system known as EPIC. As some folks may be aware, there's a shift away from copper. And as a result of that, the backup system that Tacoma uses for their dispatching will be obsolete. And what the EPIC system does is allows for a voice over internet protocol, which allows that a redundant system to work should that initial alerting system go down to function with newer technology. And the total request on that was roughly $38,000, not including any tax. Additionally, there was a request from Chief Yabe, who discussed or brought forward the potential construction of a new radio tower on Fox Island. The PSCOC recommended that Edie Yamamoto actually take that discussion to the radio system owners as a first step before formally bringing that to the board down in the future. Additionally, we discussed the communications assessment, which I know has been an ongoing conversation here. The PSCOC members are going to break into two groups, the law enforcement side as well as the fire side. We'll have subcommittees for each group representing that breakdown, or that financial breakdown. And then that group will have some conversation in the subcommittees before our next meeting in August. So we'll keep moving that conversation forward separately, those 2 groups. And that concludes my report. If there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We're to the executive director briefing. Director Yamamoto.
Good morning, members of the board. The initial portion of what we'll do, Kendra and I are going to kind of co-present on the second portion of the topic. What I'll do first is our tradition here, the Heroes Wear Headsets presentation, and I've got two scenarios or incidents to convey to you today. One is I think many of us in the locale are aware of the stabbing that occurred at Foss High School and the response that our telecommunicators and dispatch played in that. And I'll just list the names because there was a lot. As you can imagine, when there's a incident like that in a high school, a ton of communications come in simultaneously. So we had telecommunicators Autumn Pankratz, Lorna Kiyoshi, Casey Boyer, pardon me, Katie James, Tracy Gilman, Haley Thomas, Jordan Vanderzee, and Eben Johnson. And then the dispatchers involved were Christina Kyland, Emily Schramm, Maddie Rounds, Bailey Webster, Juan Gonzalez, Cody Rozier, Taylor Sellers, and Tyler Henderson. And the narrative talks about the stabbing that occurred on April 30 at Foss High School. I'll read some of that narrative to you. On April 30, telecommunicators received a variety of simultaneous calls, including hang-up calls, some calls with open lines and no one responding, and even one brief call where a small amount of information was imparted or conveyed. And it was all about a stabbing at Foss High School. The staff quickly reacted and set up contacted LE Dispatch and conveyed the information to them about the situation occurring at Foss High School. And of course, dispatch immediately responded by dispatching Tacoma police to the incident. The telecommunicators and LE Dispatch were also contacted the Tacoma Fire Department to provide initial information and continued to update as the many calls came in. I think that illustrates again the quality work that occurs here. Not only does the staff work as a team, but when the pressure is on and what normally most of us would react to as a horrible event going on and have standard human reactions, they maintain their professionalism here and they engage first responders rapidly. So thank you very much again to our line staff for their professionalism. Next incident that we have is a domestic violence call, and this one sort of illustrates, I would characterize it as the compassion of our professional staff. This one involves telecommunicator Trayvon Hoff. On May 17, he received a call for help. The caller was a female, reporting that there was a physical altercation with her husband occurring and that items were being damaged in the house. Of course, the call is ongoing, and during the call, telecommunicator Trayvon Hoff asked clarifying questions, obtained information from her so that police could be dispatched, helped with the escalation, and throughout was compassionate. Supervisor who reviewed the call said that telecommunicator Hoff was a calm voice in the dark, while quickly recognizing the seriousness of the situation and obtaining help. So thank you, Trayvon, for being a calm voice in the dark. Okay, so switching topics then, we have I'm going to sort of frame this as an exploratory discussion today. Perhaps several months ago, you might remember at one of our board meetings, I had suggested the idea of why don't we consider or explore the idea of an emergency communications public utility district. And after that suggestion, there was a significant interest. And in fact, I immediately met upstairs in the summit room with the chair and vice chair, and subsequently have presented at one of the Pierce County Fire Commissioners Association meetings as well. And there has, just from my interactions with board members, I've heard interest in exploring this topic. And so this is a very early touch on this topic. Kendra and I have been doing a heck of a lot of work, and I'll tell you, by the way, one of the most key aspects of what allowed this table to be prepared is right in the middle, and I'll just give credit where credit is due. In the red and green columns, second down row, it says Home Rule, AGO 2003, pardon me, number 11. That's an opinion from the Attorney General's office that really does an excellent job of laying out the framework for entities that could be used for telecommunications purposes in the state of Washington. Kendra cited that to me, and that made all the difference in the research. So I appreciate Kendra's invaluable help. But I'm going to orient you to this table, first of all, just so you can understand what you're looking at. Blue column is South Sound 911 in its present form, and that's a public development corporation. PCERN is what King County did, and that's the orange column next to that. That's a nonprofit corporation, and they put their radio assets into that. They all actually called it the operator. We'll explore those, or I'll compare those in just a little bit. So the first two, blue and orange, are corporations. Then the next two, I guess green, and it looks red. It looked red when I made it on my screen, but it's different color now, but we'll call it green and red. Green represents Tacoma Public Utilities, which already exists. That's an existing entity. It is not a public utility in the traditional sense. It's a utility that's a department created within Tacoma. Most of us are aware of Tacoma Public Utilities because Tacoma Public Utilities supplies utilities well outside of the boundaries of Tacoma. And in fact, Tacoma Power goes deeply into the county. So Tacoma Power exists as one of the three divisions under the Tacoma Public Utilities, and that's power, rail, and water. So that's one type of entity. Immediately next to that is the red column, and that is what would the county, Pierce County, would use if it created a utility district in the county as well. Just like Tacoma Public Utilities, which is under Tacoma, both of these biggest entities in Pierce County itself and Tacoma, have what we call home rule powers. So a heck of a lot of power to create their own rules and law, as distinctive from much smaller jurisdictions like second-class cities or towns and so forth. There's only three types of entities in the state of Washington that have home rule powers, or at least the obvious ones. Those are first-class cities with charters. Those are counties with charters. And then what was invented in the 1960s and 70s called non-charter code cities, like a Puyallup. Those types of ones have the home rule powers. Then the purple column is a traditional public utility district. You'll see those far more in the more rural counties. And then by way of comparison, the yellow column is not applicable, but it's just here for comparison. It shows what would occur in a second, a non-charter type of county. So I'm going to scroll down one and just show you there's additional components to the table, which I'll parse out some of those elements a little more. And then one final one. I just wanted to show you this document. This is from the Washington, Public Utilities District Association. And this map shows you all the counties that have some variation of a public utility district. And the counties that are in white don't have a public utility district. They have different types of utility districts, but not a classic RCW 5416 PUD. So you can see, just take a look at that. And you can see the theme there, the idea that comes through there is the counties that tend to have more populated cities and probably have a utility model that works through those cities and not the traditional public utility. So more population means you probably don't have a PUD. Less population means you probably do. That's the general theme there. Okay, headed back. So again, this is about public utility districts, which are the purple column. And why did I mention purple PUD to you early on? I'll show you why. For these two specific reasons. In the PUD statute, so you can see again in the yellow, or pardon me, the purple, There's two phrases that I cut from the statutory framework there. The first one that says revenues that are generated from that have to be used again back into the facility. So if you generate revenue out of your PUD, then it goes back into the communication facilities. And so that's why I said it's a nice tidy closed model. That's all it does. The revenue that it raises, it buys radio assets or telecommunications assets and repeats the process forever. That's basically it. And then a second one that's super important here, that's been a big topic of a discussion, is rates terms can't be unduly or unreasonably discriminatory or preferential. Basically, you have rate leveling built into the PUD statute. You can imagine a scenario where you might have different rates for different areas of a county, but the goal, as required by the statute, is to try and have ones that are not preferential or discriminatory. Okay, I'm going to take a little, oh, it looks like Councilmember Branstad.
Can you put your microphone on, please? Oh, do you? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Is it?
It doesn't look like it's on. Is it on? It's on?
Okay.
Okay, great.
You're good now. You're good.
So you talk about rates, does that mean that people, residents are ratepayers?
For an emergency communication system, I would expect that the ratepayers would be the users of the system. So that's probably the partner agencies that are largely going to use the emergency communications. So not the public. The ratepayers are probably our fire districts, our cities that are using the services.
That seems to not be the norm with public utility districts in the state. Or ratepayers and users synonymous.
I haven't explored that issue, but I'll say this: in Tacoma, for example, the entirety of the rail, water, and power model is all based off subscription fees. And so I think that's the attractive notion about having a public utility district, especially if it's based off of subscription fees. So there would be a distinction, if that's the distinction you're making, between a resident of Pierce County. Those would not be subscribers of the emergency communications system or public utility. It would actually be the responders, the folks that are in the emergency response business. Okay, Kendra, I'm going to tag team in a little bit. I'll have some additional comments.
Well, I'm going to back up just for a minute because I have the benefit of starting a little bit more recently than Kevin. So when I first started, I thought, what is Cell Sound 911? So we are the public corporation, but just to orient you with the big picture, Kevin sent this out previously, but the PSAP operation starts with the state and sort of ends with the county through the designation of a PSAP. So within that framework, we're looking at these different options. One item just to point out under the public utility district, since we have some questions there, should that be of interest, and we are in this exploratory curious stage, there is a limit in the statute for telecommunication PUDs. They must have been in existence, I think, since 2000. June 8th, 2000 is this magic number or magic date.
By the way, so at the very bottom line, it says in existence on June 8 in the purple column. That's what Kendra's referring to.
So I'm continuing to explore what happened on June 7th or June 8th to have this specific date, but we would need to explore a legislative fix potentially to have that be a viable option. And then as Kevin also alluded to, but one of my tasks in looking at this is just the curious part of asset ownership, for example, who should own the radios? Not that I'm in any position to make a policy recommendation, but just being curious about what are the available entity models to consider that, and then what are the funding sources. So you'll see this in the chart, and we're happy to answer questions, but this really is just a charting exercise, and I found it really educational and informative to explore what are the available options, and none of them are a perfect fit. So there's definitely going to be some tinkering should there be more interest.
Okay, so I'm going to head back right to just a comparison, easy comparison, and that's we'll look at the King County model, PCERN, as they called it. The nice thing, if you want to explore what King County did, they've laid it out in great chronological detail, the key documents on their website, so you can see what they've done. But they ultimately created, despite the fact that King County still has, because Kendra and I just had a conversation with the 911 coordinator for the state. And he affirms, yes, King County still has 11 PSAPs because they have a bunch of big cities up there that haven't totally consolidated those yet. But substantial efforts have occurred. And so what King County eventually did is take all of its radio assets and move it into this type of corporation, which was a nonprofit corporation. And you could see, look at the governance row. There's a board of directors, only 4 voting and 2 non-voting. And so all the PCERN operator does, which is the radio operator, is do nothing but manage the assets that were put into it. And it's all the radio assets from the various jurisdictions across the county. Were you going to say something? Okay.
No, just keep on going because I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
As we get closer.
And they eventually did that through, I've got it in the orange column down there at the very bottom, Resolution 2303. They literally had a transfer agreement where they did that. And so it looks to me like what King County was doing, pardon me, is separating all the other things from radio itself. So they still have 11 PSAPs up there. So those are the call taking and dispatch operations. They still doing their own thing, and they just put radio assets into the PCERN operator entity solely for the purpose of focusing on radio, making sure it's funded in the future and operated appropriately. So there's lots of different ways to do this. I'll say this, you can do it through corporations, you can do it through entities that have home run powers, you can do it through a statutory model. Any of these routes would get you to some of the objectives you might be interested in. I'll list those again. These are the things that I've heard from all of you over the months. Still strong interest in achieving a single system in Pierce County. Still highly concerned about disparity in subscriber fee rates. There's, could be gaps in coverage under the existing model that could be addressed through a unified model. There's duplication in operations and administration because we have 2 large systems in the county. And then there's the big issue that we all wrestle with, that we're currently wrestling with, is funding uncertainty and volatility. So if our model right now really is sort of scrimp and save and feel the pressure as the assets get to their end of life, and then, oh gosh, we need to come up with $15–20 million in a hurry to redo the system. Otherwise, we're not going to have emergency communications. So really the notion, or where I'm coming from, is we must expect that emergency communications are going to be a service that we always need. That's a question that's always answered. Really the question that we're talking about is, how do we supply those in the future? Do we continue to use the approach that we've used, or should we just try and commit to it instead of having these big spikes of dollars that we have to come with? Why not just level set that and constantly do that from now and into the future? Of course, one of these types of entities wouldn't have to stick with the traditional technologies. If new technologies evolved, you could have a pilot component of the radio operator who would experiment with, learn about the new technologies, and maybe evolve away from some of the traditional technologies. So tons of ability to structure this, address this. I'd say this, the corporations are by far and away the most flexible because you can make them any way you want, more or less. The PUD statute is largely a statute. You can't do much with it unless you, I shouldn't say it that way. It is what it is unless you get the legislature to change it, where the corporations, you folks can change them directly. And then in the middle, because our biggest city, Tacoma and Pierce County, have home rule powers, they can create an entity or mechanisms to achieve what we want as well. So there's a broad range of possibilities here. I'm just looking fundamentally in an early way for your feedback, your interest, If the message that I got today was, okay, this is interesting academic exercise, don't do anything more, we wouldn't do anything more. But if there's a bunch of you that are interested in exploring these, we will advance.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. Vice Chair?
Real quick, Brian, or Kevin and Kendra, PSERN, was that, I think I know, but was that created after South Sound 911?
Yeah, so 2023 is the resolution transferring assets, so it would be after us.
The reason I asked that question is because they actually took our documents when we were doing it and created PSERNs. And
And the same lawyer.
Huh? Well, I didn't know that.
That Pacifica Law Firm was doing the work. Yeah.
So that is one of the things that we got kind of mulled into, because as we were putting our things together, they were moving forward. I hate to say it that way, but that's what their design is kind of what some of us thought that we were going to be when we first created this. So that's always been the goal, is to try and get one area that's doing the communications and let us do our job. So I see that as a model for us moving forward, but there's all sorts of other areas we can go to. And I like the idea of, looking at all of these, trying to figure out, I am happy we're finally doing something that we're moving forward with to try and get this thing taken care of. Because I think some of these things would create more opportunities for us to get coverage where we need coverage if it was inside and we have these people working on it. So I probably have some other questions, but I was pretty sure that PSERN came in after us, because I remember one of our US senators actually grabbed us back in DC about 10 years ago and says, King County is trying to do the same thing you guys were doing. And I said, and then it turns out they modeled it. So it is a great plan. I mean, if we look at PSERNs, really get into it, I don't know if you want us to rate these now or just think about it and bring it back to the meeting. I think we need to actually look at this and maybe come back in a meeting or two and say, okay, these are the priority, we think this one would work better, and have you guys, do the homework on it to see if that's the one we want, or we come up with a different plan. But I think PSERN looks really good to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Councilmember Bushnell?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for doing all this research and bringing this together. I guess and you touched on a little bit. Could you kind of frame out a little bit more about the challenges that we're trying to solve here and how these potential solutions might be able to fix that? I just want to hear a little bit more about it. GAPS is certainly a part of it, and is the expectation that all the assets would be, including towers and radios and infrastructure, would go to this entity, and they would bulk purchase radios and stuff for all jurisdictions? Is that kind of the solution? So just, if you could just frame out the challenges that we're facing that this might be able to solve. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So right now we have Deputy Mayor, a wide open jurisdictions have wide open choice. So for example, in the PSERN model, because they moved all the assets under that one entity, they also have decided what mobile or handheld radios can be used. And so the range of possibilities has shrunk. They actually have a list on their website that makes supporting the radio assets so much easier, because then, you can choose from 5 or 6 rather than 27. They no longer have multiple dozens of radio shops across King County. Now they have one. And so that gets rid of the duplication in operation and administrative components related to radio throughout the county. I don't know about gap coverage up there, but gap coverage here matters a lot, because even the proposal from Chief Yabe is to say, hey, spend some dollars and resolve the McNeil Fox Island issue. I think Chief Engel's response to that right away was the appropriate response, which is, wait a second, this is an asset that's groups purchasing, but whose asset is it? Is it Tacoma's asset? Is it Pierce County's asset? Who's going to look after it? Who's going to repair it, replace? If you have a single entity, there isn't that kind of question as to who owns it. It's going to go to the operator of radio. Single system, I think, means a lot of things to people here, but I think generally we understand it is, hey, there's 2 systems. We probably don't need a duplication. I think duplication in the systems here, that's what happened about a decade ago. I think all of us from a layperson perspective can understand that there would be much more synergy if we just had a single type of system. And if you put the assets, both 700 and 800 into a system, even though they're operating through an ISS right now, over time, you can convert the assets one way or the other and eliminate the dual system aspect of what we have here in Pierce County. So there's benefits if those are the things that are our objectives, if we want to use one of these types of mechanisms to do that.
And then I'm assuming through that type of level of integration, you're also thinking about the long-term sustainability of those assets themselves as radios, as towers. In perpetuity, they need upgrades, changes, replacement, repair, all those things that kind of consolidates that into kind of more of a larger capital management plan, so to speak.
Exactly right.
That the subscribers are paying back into the system, knowing that these assets are eventually going to age out.
That's exactly
And
right.
then you're mentioning the opportunity for making sure that there's a carve out for innovation and technology change in the future as well. Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Because I would, if it's okay, I know this is strange, but I know that Daniel Key isn't on here, but I would love to hear from Daniel Key and the radio operators just because we haven't heard from them. Do you mind coming up and just talking a little bit about what the next steps are with the radio operators? And I don't think you're on the agenda, so I'm sorry. I should have told you that. Hey, I'm going to make you come up.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation. Daniel Key from the city of Tacoma on behalf of the Tacoma radio system. So the radio system owners and operators are still in the scheduling phase with Kevin to follow up on this discussion. So we don't have a official position or official response or questions to the exploration that's going on here. But it is clear from our previous work with the single system exploration, with the understanding of what the functional outcomes we were looking for from public safety communication in the region, that in order to do some of the larger projects and entertain changes in the current operating, another governance vehicle or another structure is one of those options that's there. It's not necessary, but it's definitely something we can support, especially if it gives you more options around the types of revenue that come to the system. And so I don't know that there is anything specific that I need from my perspective as a radio owner to add to the conversation at the moment, but I'm happy to take any questions or take this conversation where you like it to be.
I just have two questions for
Sure.
you. One question is about end of life, not just end of life. When you see the necessity to do these upgrades or improvements to a lot of the capital that we have, that's one question. The second question is, last meeting we approved something as far as things that come to the budget and as a budget line. And there's a process where they can come through a council member and not a council member, but some people on the council or people sitting on the board. And I feel like we might have missed a step after talking to you yesterday about getting approval from the radio operators or having it go through that part, or where does that part sit in the conversation for something that's coming to the budget that's an ask for funds. So I just feel like I need to understand from your perspective where that should sit in the process.
Sure. So a couple separate questions. Let's talk about the capital replacements first, perhaps, as it may be a little more definitive topic to review. So the systems as they exist today, we do have some flexibility, as with any asset, about when and how you want to invest, how assertive you want to be about making those replacements and ensuring your reliability. But broadly, an 8 to 10 year period, starting from approximately 2028 through say 2036, would be the prime window for investment on the radio network equipment. And so we've talked a lot about subscriber device replacement over the past few years. Those devices generally have about a 10-year lifespan. They've been reaching that point of vendor support end, and we're into a break, fix, and replacement phase for that. We generally have that managed from an operational perspective right now. Funding is always a question. Agencies are always trying to juggle tight budgets. That is ongoing, and that will continue to be ongoing. And part of our strategy with that is to level out that replacement peak to be more of a constant operation of the business. So we're stretching some of the assets out longer. We're placing some a little bit earlier as people need new features, such that we don't have this decadal spike in expense on that. The radio network equipment, There are multiple factors in that, or multiple types of assets in that. Concrete and steel tends to last a long time if you maintain it. IT stuff doesn't last nearly as long as people want it to. And whether we like it or not, a modern digital network is IT equipment. And so you can expect a 10 to 15-year lifespan for some of the core equipment. Most of that is maintained bit by bit here as necessary, like we've placed the data network behind it, but the actual transmitters themselves are going to be due for a next life cycle replacement. And then that should buy us another, 15-ish years after that replacement. But think about that, some assets on a 10-year, some stretched out to 20, concrete and steel a little bit beyond that, but a major investment really starting from 2028 to 2036. Maybe one comment on some of the options that were in front of you today is from Tacoma's perspective, and that's who I can speak on behalf of today. We operate a lot like the TPU model on that column. We're entirely rate funded. We have our under the charter of the city of Tacoma, and we're investing all of those revenues in replacement of the system. And we are in a good position to do that replacement, but we're communicating now that that's going to change the costs that you experience because we have to bring those on, and that rate curve is going to change and go up dramatically. So there's an opportunity in front of us to say, now that we know this is coming, we have a couple-year runway to decide how to get there, and a relatively long period of cost expense. Do we want to approach it in a different way that we have? But the default answer will make sure that the radio system is running. It's just how and where those costs are borne and when the work gets done will change depending on how you want to approach the work. So that's kind of the capital thing. Any other follow-up questions on that, or if I've didn't answer the question? Thank you. So on the governance piece, we're happy to get involved anytime, anywhere in decisions about folks wanting to invest in the radio. We love the enthusiasm and people wanting to make sure that these systems are reliable. Since there are a lot of opportunities to invest, if any one idea gets some traction, looping us in as soon as possible is very much appreciated. We are trying to get established or reestablish the radio subscribers group on a regular cadence. We've had 1 or 2 meetings in the first half of the year. We haven't quite found our stride yet, but that really is the forum where those ideas should come to be groomed. And we've started that by having an early discussion and hearing that the priorities of the folks at that meeting, time changes, but at that meeting really was about coverage and reliability, where we wanted the investments to be. That process takes time. And so we'll be working with the staff here at Southside 911 and ourselves to make sure that we have an open communication and understand how to pass those ideas back and forth. But really, we're happy to engage whenever and wherever it meets the public conversation. But the more preview you can have, the better.
Thank you. Vice Chair, do you have any questions?
One of the ones I have for the executive director is that with all the examples that you put up there, and I want to make sure that if we start looking at these things and all of a sudden we decide this is the one we want as a board, does the board have the power to create that entity?
Yes, it would. Probably. And I say that because if you chose the Tacoma Public Utilities route, well, that was decided and created by the Tacoma Council. Yes and no. Again, if I go to the red column would be a utility district created by the county, and so the county would create that. On the corporate columns, absolutely. So we've already created one here that's a public utility or public corporation, public development authority. We could also create a nonprofit, although I'd say probably both can serve the exact same purposes. So yes and no, depending on which column you chose.
So you are a politician.
Yes.
I just want you. Yes. With that said, the whole thing that we were running into this a couple of years ago is that we're trying to get the systems. Who's going to do what? When we're going to do it? Is it going to be some? And then people were out there trying to say, well, we can do it better with this system that doesn't have anything, which happens when you create a vacuum. Then people are out there looking for themselves instead of for the organization. So I think as we go forward, hopefully next month or month after that, if we have more conversations and better discussions and we get a clear vision of where we want to go, because I think I know where I want to go. And so if we take those 6 items, 7 items we had up there, cut them down to 2 or 3 and do some deep dive on those. But it's going to take this board to say which 3 they'd like, 2 they'd like, or something like that for the deep dive. And sometimes we have to be careful because there's Pierce County, there's Tacoma, and there's Puyallup. And we don't want anybody thinking that we don't want to do this group because we don't want to give too much power to this group or too much power to this group, or that giving that power to this board. And I think we need to, as we discuss this and we move forward, we make sure that this is not a power scheme or anything else. This is about doing communications, emergency communications for Pierce County, and having the wherewithal, the finances and everything else put in place to be able to do it without worrying about, because everybody's got budgets. And if all of a sudden the budget hits hard for an organization, that creates a problem for this organization. So I appreciate your time and your effort. I think it's a good move. I think we're finally trying to move forward on things that we need to move forward on. And as we go, hopefully I don't think it's going to be at the end of this year, but it's a good start. So that's my comments, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Oh, yes, Councilmember Hubler. Sorry, apologize.
So I've done a lot of research into PSERN, my husband being Seattle Fires. So there's the reports up there from the firefighters. It is much better coverage. They don't have gaps. They don't have the worry of changing over if they're going into different jurisdictions. So if Seattle has to go into South King or anything, there's not a gap there. There's no issues within their radio system. So I think all of Pierce County should be kind of that same system. And maybe if Pierce and King can also work together within the same towers, because there could be that coverage gap there as well. Hey, come on.
Speak
come
for
on.
yourself.
Yeah, we might need it. We're kind of touching borders here. But maybe talking with some of the people that use the radios in King County or within PSERN, maybe talking with them to see what works best for them.
Thank you so much. All right. Yes. Our I should say, Executive Mello.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kevin, for listening to conversations over a long period of time and trying to help the board think about what are options to proceed. I very much suggest that Kevin or your designee continue conversations with the owners of the systems. I think being really clear about what problem we're trying to solve. I really appreciate Board Member Bushnell's question. I think we need to center this conversation about what problem we're trying to solve: coverage, reliability, interoperability, cost, and really thinking about what is continuing to center the conversation, as Vice Chair McElligott said, about really what is the best way to get there, and really centering the conversation there. But I really think we need to start with testing the assumptions that we have with the existing owners of systems and all that it takes to administer the system and operate and maintain the system. So that would be my request. And I realize this was a exploratory conversation. You're trying to ground us in models. If we took this conversation any further, I think because there's so many interdependencies for this complicated conversation with budgets and assets and jurisdiction, that we really need to start drafting a comprehensive memo and putting things down in writing and really thinking through things in a narrative. So I realize why we don't have that today. Before you go do a lot of work and spend a lot of time, you want to know if there's any interest. I think before you go do a bunch more work, I think serious conversations need to happen with the owners. I think there's some critical early conversations with owners and testing some of these assumptions against what problem we're trying to solve. with owners of the current system is the next critical conversation. I think we're getting momentum. I think we have good energy here, but I think those are the next steps.
Thank you very much, Executive Mello. All right, are there any other questions? All right, so we'll go on to our next presentation. It's a World Cup presentation from Communications Center Manager Carly Swanson.
I recognize the board probably in home jurisdictions has probably heard variations on presentations about World Cup. And so what Carly's going to present on is World Cup through the lens as it impacts our operation. So appreciate it, Carly.
Before you get started, do we have tickets?
If I had tickets, maybe I would share, but. Good morning, everyone. So yes, I'm here to talk about the World Cup. I don't know how much you guys know about this, but this is one of, or if not the largest sporting event in the world. And it's come to Seattle. The tournament itself lasts about 5 weeks. Events in Seattle are covering a little over 3 weeks, and they're mostly connected to the matches that are hosted at Lumen Field, which is going by Seattle Stadium during the events. And so there's several events happening more locally related to these, and these are the 6 that are happening in Tacoma with the dates and the teams that we know to be playing. The main host of events here in Pierce County is the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and their events are mostly happening at their admin building, as well as secondary events at Woven, which is on the Ruston waterfront, and 72nd and Vickery. In addition to the events specific for soccer matches, they're hosting several cultural events as well, and they're listed up there. The powwow this weekend and the stick games being the 2 biggest of the events, as well as they'll be hosting camping at Chief Lashai schools in between those events. So bringing a large visitor population to Tacoma and Pierce County. These all fall within one of the busier times of Pierce County as well. So we have several overlapping events that we're tracking. Our anticipated biggest impact will be this Friday for Juneteenth, with the large event happening in Tacoma, as well as the US playing in Seattle. And then the following weekend, the weekend of the 26th through the 28th, is the stick games for the Puyallup Tribe, as well as the Buckley Log Show and the Taste of the Northwest at the fairgrounds. So those are 3 of the larger ones, as well as stuff that's continuing to happen throughout the county as well. So what we've been working on since early 2005 is regional collaboration. We've been attending meetings and trainings with partners, both in Pierce County as well as neighboring counties. A lot of focus with King County, since they are going to be greatly impacted. We have had 2 events already within this footprint, and we didn't have any noticeable situations or anything arise from that impacted us out of the ordinary. So I've listed some of the partners we've been working with, obviously the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, the Tacoma EOC, Pierce County DEM, and the City of Tacoma. We worked closely with the Puyallup Tribe. They're one of the secondary PSAPs within Pierce County. So when we receive a law enforcement call for them, we transfer the caller to them. And so the understanding that these events could create an influx of 911 calls, and making sure the capacity is there to answer the call, and if not, what we're going to be doing to ensure they get the information for their response. We've also been working with our local law enforcement and fire agencies to ensure that we have interoperable communication through the radio specifically, and kind of laying that out. We've also collaborated with regional partners for public education. Our PIO has been working with their PIO group, and it's kind of expanded as this has expanded, to make sure that the communication that's going out to visitors is in multiple languages, understandable. One of the biggest things that we've recognized is we push a lot for text to 911, but international cell phones don't necessarily have that capacity once they're within our footprint. So making sure that international visitors know 911 to call, that multiple languages are available for translation, all of those sorts of things. So kind of continuing on what's in place, the higher impact to 911 calls should there be an incident within an event. Riverside Fire is one of our partner fire agencies. They're providing standby at the events at the Puyallup Tribe admin building, so making sure that we're supporting them and what they need. We've helped with the Pride, or excuse me, with the parade that was last Friday, and the Tacoma Police Department, who handled a big chunk of that since it was on city streets. The Sheriff's Department will be helping with an event at 72nd and Vickery this coming Friday, and then as well as the other events happening around the county. One of the biggest things that kind of took place throughout the nation was testing of international cell phones. So not just the dialing of 911, but what location information is coming into the PSAP. And so there was work done by the carriers to expand out text fields to ensure that we can capture that entire phone number with a country code, so that if the phone number were to disconnect or hang up for some reason, we would be able to dial back. We also enabled international dialing for our phone system during this time. It wasn't something that was active prior to this. And finally, we have the regional talk groups, just making sure with Puyallup Tribal that we're able to talk to them on the radio, which isn't something we necessarily do every day. They've also brought in federal resources, so they've had their radios programmed with channels that we can use should there be a need for interoperable communication. We've also identified what radio channels would be used should unified command be set up. So that would be police and fire talking on the same channels for an incident within an event. So all of that is in place, hoping that the planning means that nothing will actually happen and this will all go off without a hitch. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Vice Chair.
Real quick, because of the influx of the number of people in population, cell phones are, I mean, we haven't had any problems with any system shutting down?
Not so far, no.
Okay. All right. If that happens, what's the backup on that? Do we have a
If,
backup?
I guess, which system
Cell
are
service
you?
goes down, all of a sudden there's a overload of cell phone contacts and overloads. What, is there a setup that we have? Do we have satellite phones, or what do you?
We have internal stuff for us to be able to call back out on. We would have our admin lines and that sort of thing.
Okay.
That are not necessarily tied to cell service.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You do have backups?
Yes.
Big. Okay.
Lots.
Yes, Councilmember Brandstetter.
Yeah, thank you. Given the assertion that we've told folks that translation services are available, and given the fan bases that are actually playing games in our area where predominant languages would be Farsi or Arabic, Belgium is kind of pretty common, French, which we'd have, but what kind of expenses are we experiencing to be sure that we have particularly Farsi and Arabic translations available in real time?
So day-to-day operations, we use a service called Language Line, where we would transfer a caller who needs translation services to their service. And with the knowledge that World Cup nationwide is bringing in this influx, they've upstaffed and they've created they're ensuring additional translators with those skill sets are on duty 24/7.
And does our arrangement with them have a cost per call, or is it a set rate for a period of time?
I do believe there is some per call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Chair. There's a question here, but probably not one that you're prepared to answer yet. But so it's mostly a comment. I just think that this is such an opportunity that we've had to develop relationships within our county with different jurisdictions as well as cross county. And I'm sure you all have, in these discussions, identified challenges, you've troubleshooted them, you've come up with solutions. So I'm just interested maybe in the future, if you all are going to do, I'm sure, a kind of a recap after the event to see, what of what you've created these new arrangements, and is worth keeping, or at least kind of having in your toolbox that could be activated in the future for a regional event, whether it's a disaster, Mount Rainier or Cascadia. all of this, I think, will be helpful to us in the future because, you know, we do operate regionally, and anything major that happens is going to involve all of our jurisdictions and the tribe and multiple counties. So I don't assume that you would have the answer to that, but I just think this is an amazing opportunity for us to really make this happen.
Yes, I would agree. Just having the conversations and being able to continue to build those relationships that were there, but not necessarily as important or at the forefront. I know there are after action pieces in place for all of the EOCs and all of that sort of thing. And I know with the Washington State 911 office, a lot of challenges have just popped up as far as discussions and what would we do. So just having those and, like you said, building your toolbox for when something does happen, it's invaluable.
Well, thank you for all of your hard work and to all of your partners. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? I want to thank you so much for coming with the update. I'm sorry you didn't have tickets for us, but yeah. I really do appreciate Councilmember Danson's question, kind of like a follow-up at some point, something that we might learn from how you did this so that we could take it back. We're consistently in this county doing partnerships and collaboration, and any ideas or things that came up that would be helpful. I know it sounds kind of ethereal, but I think that you probably could say, oh, this is something that we did that was spectacular, that worked out. And I really think like how amazing that you figured out that like if someone wants to make a phone call and it's got the country code, it might have to be different if they're going to text or something. That is like genius. So thank you. Yeah, for that. All right. So I kind of want to just go back to our conversation about that Kevin was having and the things that Executive Mello said. And I just want to say that anything that we bring forward here, I wanted you to know, I think it should be transparent that the goal is not to be the city of Tacoma, Pierce County, but we're working together. That is the end result, is what's best for the people who live, work, play, and visit in Pierce County to get the best emergency services possible. The whole goal is that we're trying to make sure that when you call 911 anywhere, that you can get service, that you get help, that there isn't, that we are working together. And so that's how I show up every day working on this board. And that's my expectation for everyone else who's at this table and in this room. So I don't have any secrets. There's nothing I'm doing in a back room anywhere. If you have a question about anything that I'm talking about or thinking about, or that you're not sure about, please get a hold of me. I'm always interested in what you think. I care about every one of your communities and every one of your constituents and your neighbors and your family members. It matters that we work together. I just want you to know that, because I think that sometimes we have conversations and it's sort of somebody thinks, well, why are we doing this? And then I find something out later, and I'm not that person. And Councilmember Bushnells knows that I'm just the kind of person, what you see is what you get. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I don't always have the answers, but I will work hard. But I'm here. I have hopefully another 3.5 years on this board, and I hope that we're going to get something done. I've been here for 4 years, and I feel like we haven't gotten anything done. That's not true, of course. There's little things that we've done along the way, but I would love to see us actually do something that makes a difference for this organization moving forward. So that's my goal, and I would love to have you on board. And so if there's questions that you have or things you don't like I'm doing, I don't run great meetings, but I'm trying. Please let me know. And I'm talking to every single one of the people here, and also just people at South Sound 911 who work at this agency. I care about you. We care about you. And we would never do anything that was going to make it hard for you to do your job. I just want us to do our jobs better. And better doesn't always mean doing it the same way, possibly coming up with other systems or ways to do things. And I'm here to listen to you. And I don't have all the answers, like I said. I'm not in first responders. I don't have a first responder at my house. I have a judge. And that's a problem anyways. So I just wanted to put that out there. So those are my comments for today. So. All right, so now, oh, actually, is there anything anyone else wanted to add for the good of the order? I'll do that part first. Anything? Yes.
Yeah, I just had one question in the Mr. Yamamoto's report that we just sort of went by because he always has things in it for us to just read. But there is the board calendar, which looks like what I expected, and that next month is indicated as, rather than a regular meeting, it's a budget study session. And is that intended to be a joint session with the
Yes.
okay, and so we won't really be doing any regular business to do
Yeah.
that. Last month, you proposed that as we move further along in the allocation revision process, that you also wanted to have a joint study session with that before that got to the point of where it was finalized or up for a vote to finalize. Did you have a month that you were thinking to doing that, and were you thinking that as also being a replacement for a regular meeting or a special meeting?
I'm going to call on an expert
Yeah.
on the calendar.
So I appreciate the question because those are two weighty topics, budget and the allocations. I envision them being discussed together. And so I think July will not only in the joint study session, sink our teeth into the budget, but we'll also be talking about cost allocations or assessment models because they dovetail together. One informs the other. And so the budget is driven by the allocation formulas. And I think we need to have a joint discussion about both.
And so you're anticipating making some decisions about allocation formulas that could be used for the 2027 budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So since there's no other questions, I'm going to go back to the action item we have.
And that is item number 1, resolution 2026-07 to approve the South Sound 911 2026 budget amendment number 1.
Can I get a motion?
Go move.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. So now we're at the end of the meeting, and I already asked if you had anything you wanted to ask. And so I guess, yes, Executive Mello.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that opportunity earlier.
Because I moved them. Sorry.
So good.
Yeah.
Kevin, this annual report is beautiful. Everyone who contributed to it. I'll spend more time with it, but at first glance, it looks like it's in plain language and easy to consume and helps highlight a lot of good work. I just wanted to also make a request. Sometime this year, I'm hoping that, Kevin, we could spend more time as a board learning about the work of the 988 system here. I think, like a lot of my colleagues, we interact with a lot of community members who are tapping alternative crisis response and all kinds of things going on in our community. And I would benefit, and I suspect my colleagues would benefit from just continuing to learn more about, I see in the report how 988 calls are increasing, how that's going, how integration of 988 is going, what we can do to further support the integration of 988 and alternative crisis response to support our traditional frontline public safety officers, and just how that's going here at South Sound 911 as a tip of the spear of supporting alternative crisis response. So I would just ask that we spend more time learning about how that's going, how integration's going, how ramp up is going. What are the services? What are the choke points? How can we better deploy? What more can be done to better deploy those systems?
Mr. Executive, your request is not lost. Our current plan is to have that presentation on 988 in August. We'd considered it for June. I wasn't far enough on my work. It's not lost on us. I was even researching last evening about it. So the topic's not lost, nor is the original request or conception that you advanced of why don't we switch the Pierce County model to be something that's a bit more like the King County model? Not lost at all. I was going through legislation last evening, in fact, about how some of that got set up. It's clear to me that I'm going to have to engage some folks at the Department of Health, which is the agency at the state level that manages that work, to figure out how those decisions were made about that. But there's some work there to do. It's not lost on us. It will come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great question. I appreciate that information. All right. With that, can I take the last motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion approved. We are adjourned.